So, good evening, everybody. I've been told we're not being live streamed, but just recorded this evening, so I'm going to make a start. So, if members can remember to turn off their mobile phones or place them to silent, please. And I think everybody in the room knows the fire drill, so I'm not going to be doing that. So move on to apologies. I've got apologies from Councillor Chekovich, and Councillor Harbison is substituting, and apologies from Councillor Cape. Is that all? Yeah. And if we can approve the minutes of the 19th of September, is everybody happy to do a true record and I can sign them? Move on to declarations of interest. Members to declare any interest not included on the schedule. Any member? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to application number 1, which is about the Abbey Street Grayson Place development, I will declare my usual interest as the portfolio holder for business and regeneration, although I've had no dealings with the actual planning application itself or discussions with planning officers. Thank you.
Any other member? No. Declarations of contact. Any member? No. We do have speakers on the list. So move on to planning application 039677 site 51A073, the ex-co-op buildings and car park, Abbey Street. Jasmine.
Thank you, Chair. This Reserve Matters application is for the erection of a flexible Class E use at Plot 3 and a multi-storey car park at Plot 4 relating to appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. The key issues for this application are the principle of the development, impact on visual amenity and residential amenity, highway safety and accessibility, flood risk and drainage, heritage and archaeology, and ecology and biodiversity. The principle of this development has been established following the approved outline application. As part of the outline consent, the parameters indicated that Plot 3 shall be used as a flexible space for Class E. The outline also included a maximum provision of 450 car parking spaces, This Reserve Matters application is in general accordance with the parameters as per the outline and is considered to be acceptable. In terms of visual amenity, Plot 3 proposes to use high quality materials, including red brick and render, complementing the existing character of Nuneaton. The front elevation of Plot 3 proposes a large active frontage onto the square. And Plot 4, for the car park, will be 9 levels in total and is to be constructed from a modular steel frame with mesh facade panels to achieve a secure vandal and fire resistant structure. It is considered that the overall design, size, scale and use of materials is acceptable in terms of visual amenity. The nearest existing residential property to the site will be over 60 metres away. Within the site itself, flats are proposed to the first, second and third floors of Plot 2. The distance standards between the flats and this development are 25 metres, and therefore the distance standards have been met as per the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD. Plot 3 will meet a BREEAM standard of very good as per the requirements of policy BE3 of the Borough Plan. NBBC environmental health officers have no objection to this proposal. Conditions relating to noise, including details of plant and equipment to be installed, were conditioned as part of the outline consent. The impact on residential amenity is therefore considered to be acceptable. The proposed layout includes 2 new pedestrian routes on a north-south axis through the site connecting Queen's Road and Abbey Street. The proposed multi-storey car park would provide 300 car parking spaces, including 15 disabled spaces. This is a reduction in spaces as highlighted on the addendum. In addition, no electric vehicle charging points are proposed at this stage as per the addendum. However, a condition on the outline consent states that there shall be no occupation of any phase until charging points at a rate of 10% and at least 1 charging point for every 10 disabled parking spaces has been provided. A further 45 car parking spaces were provided under the previous application for plots 5 and 6, and there are also 63 spaces to serve the hotel. The total number of car parking spaces for this development is 408. Taking into account the floor space of each plot and the proposed residential properties, the required number of spaces as per the parking standards SPD would be 340. This proposal therefore exceeds this requirement. It should also be noted that there are other existing car parks within Nuneaton Town Centre. A transport statement has been submitted and Warwickshire County Council Highways have confirmed that they have no objections subject to a condition. The multi-storey car park also proposes 36 secure cycle spaces in the form of Sheffield stands. It is considered that there will be no detrimental harm to highway safety or accessibility as a result of this application. The majority of the application site is within flood zone 1, with a small part to the south and western boundaries located within flood zones 2 and 3. The Environment Agency had no objection to the outline application, subject to the development being carried out within the flood risk assessment and the mitigation measures. This was included as a condition on the outline consent, and the principles of which have been carried through to this application. Warwickshire County Council Flood Risk Management Team have no objections to this application, and it is therefore considered that the impact on flooding and drainage is acceptable. Abbey Street adjoins the Nuneaton Town Centre Conservation Area. However, plots 3 and 4, which are being considered under this application, do not adjoin the conservation area. The development would lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of the conservation area. Where there is less than substantial harm, the MPPF states that this harm should be weighed against the public benefits. This proposal would bring major economic and social benefits, which therefore outweighs the harm. An archaeological assessment was submitted with the outline consent, and a condition was included on the decision notice relating to further evaluation and mitigation works. Warwickshire County Council Archaeology Team have no comments to make on this application. It is therefore considered that the impact on heritage and archaeology is acceptable. The main area of public realm is proposed at the heart of the site, which will consist of a mix of hard and soft landscaping. The materials and plant species are to be agreed via the relevant outline planning condition. This application is being recommended for approval, subject to the conditions as set out in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. I've got one speaker on this, that's Councillor Condacore. We've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, councillors. I initially objected to this because the parking spaces were ridiculously tight and impossible to use. The council has rearranged them so they're now suitably spaced, but there's a crazy issue of the door into the parking area. It doesn't line up with the parking for the bicycles. It comes at the back wheel. So if you look on page 31, the door into the car parking area for the cyclists is crazily unsafe because it doesn't line up with the central corridor. But more important on that diagram, disabled access is on the wrong side of the building. On the left-hand side, we have a lift shaft and level access to the surface, so if you want to get out of the car park. On the right-hand side of the car park, you are about 2 metres up in the air because each floor slopes. So there is no step-free access from the right hand of the car park, which is where all the facilities are. This is absolutely crazy that we have steps designed in connecting people from our car park into where the cinema and all our shops and things will be. Worse still, if you exit from the left hand of the side of the car park, where there's that area marked as pedestrians walking, actually has traffic coming into the car park on top of the pedestrian walkway. The doorway is malaligned effectively, so that if you look, it's better to look on the plots at the back. The tracking of a car going into the car park runs initially down the pedestrian walkway before it then moves to the centre of the roadway. I say the whole thing is just designed backwards. You should put the lift at the left-hand side of the car park, away from all the cars coming in, and give people step-free access into the square of Great Grayson Place. The whole thing is nuts to have it 2 metres high at the end where you actually want people to get out. And then going out of the car park, if you actually look on page 27, you'll see that someone coming out of the car park, there's no clear lane markings of how people get out. But the pedestrians, the cyclists, the traffic in and out, all go in on that top left-hand corner of the car park. And if a disabled person did come out the top left-hand side of the car park, he'd then have to cross the traffic again, walk round the middle building because there's barriers on the walkway between the car park and the block to the north, and walk all the way round to get to the front door of the cinema. The whole thing is not designed for disabled access, and I say it doesn't look safe. The way the pedestrians, cyclists and cars all converge in the same corner where the two doors are is nuts. So I ask you to defer this whilst the officers explain the safety of that entrance. Thank you.
Has any member got any points of clarification? No, thank you very much. Right, to move into debate, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Any member? Councillor Smith and Councillor Hartle. Thank you. Any member? Councillor Hartle.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, would officers be able to come back on the points made by Councillor Conticore, just so that, you know, obviously it can be explained a bit more, and hopefully can put Councillor Conticore's concerns to rest.
Jasmine, you wanna? You taking it?
Is that on? Yeah. Yeah, as with all applications, this has been consulted with highways in terms of access, safety, those sorts of issues, and they haven't raised any objection. I see Councillor Conticore's point, but without any objection from highways, then I think we'd struggle to insist on any amendments to the plans.
Any other member? Any other member? No? I've just got a couple of comments myself then. I do share some of Councillor Condicore's concerns in terms of access in and out and the amount of disabled spaces. I know there's been an amendment in there in terms of the disabled spaces now, which might help somewhat, because I didn't feel there was just enough in terms of the percentages that they've got to deliver and no more. That was a concern. But I'm happy to hear any other member. Councillor Hammersley.
Yes, also I think it's been addressed with the size of the parking spaces for the new vehicles of today, but as also the strength of the building for the new weights of vehicles, battery vehicles been taken into account as well. Thank you.
Claire.
that issue really would fall under sort of building regulations in terms of stability and safety of a building, but I would imagine that's all been taken in account in terms of the development proposal, but it's not something for this planning committee to really consider.
Councillor Shires.
Thank you. If there are some concerns that of the amount of disabled spaces and access, is there, and County Councillor Hayward Highways are saying that, you know, it's okay, there's nothing, you know, not coming back with anything. Is there a way of deferring it so they can just go through it with us a bit more? Maybe, I don't know, maybe whether I'm just a little bit silly on this, do some arrows or things that would just explain it a little bit of where disabled access is, or if we're saying that it's going to be too far away or there's steps down into the theatre and things like that, or am I completely missing?
Which one's going to answer? Is that yourself, Claire?
So as I said, without a sort of any objection from Highways to sustain, then I think it'd be difficult to insist on any further information to be submitted. They haven't got any concerns in terms of access into the car park or manoeuvrability within the car park. That hasn't been raised as part of the application process.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just seek clarification from the officers on this point, because we see the layout of the parking spaces, etc., on page 31, but we aren't actually conditioning the specific layout of all the car parking spaces, are we? Because we're considering the construction of the building and the maximum usage and how many it should have, whereas in other car parks that we own and operate throughout the town centre, periodically they get reviewed. Car parking spaces, they get changed, they can be realigned, the number of spaces changed, etc., or car park or disability ones moved to a different area depending on how we decide to redesign the physical layout of the car park. So is that understanding correct? 'Cause I don't see how we could necessarily condition that you have to paint a white line here for each of the individual bays. I think that's something that, are we getting a bit too hung up on? And we're talking about the principles and the actual physical construction of the car park rather than the layout of each individual car parking bay. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, I would say so. You treat it as any other car park within the town centre. The council in the future could decide, as you said, to amend some of the car parking bays, switch some bays around, and this is no different as far as I can see.
I don't know whether it might be helpful for members if maybe we put a note on to say we discussed the disabled access, etc., just so the developers are aware as they move forward. Is that acceptable? Yeah, yes for that. So I'll now move into the voting. So all those in favour, please shout. That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 2, which is planning application site 28B003, land off Weddington Road, Nuneaton, Warwickshire. Jasmine.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for outline consent for the erection of up to 700 dwellings, including public open space, a retail unit, landscaping and sustainable drainage system, and a vehicular access point from Weddington Road. This application is being presented to committee as the council have received an appeal against non-determination of this application. The council had requested a number of extensions of time from the applicant in order to give them time for them to overcome some of the objections received from consultees. However, the applicant refused to agree a final extension of time, and therefore the council must move forward to determination. However, before this application could be determined, the council received an appeal against non-determination. The key issues for this application are the principle of the development, affordable housing and housing mix, visual amenity and landscape character, residential amenity, highway safety and accessibility, uses on the site, flood risk and drainage, air quality, ecology and biodiversity, heritage and archaeology, contamination and land stability, and planning obligations. The application site is located outside of the settlement boundary and is located within the open countryside for planning policy purposes. The principle of new open market residential development in this location would fail to accord with the provisions of policy DS3 of the Borough Plan. The Council are at present able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply of 5.47 years, and so the tilted balance is not engaged. However, even if the Council could not demonstrate this, the focus of development would be on redevelopment opportunities within Nuneaton Town Centre and elsewhere within the borough at the edge of settlements. The site's location outside of the settlement boundary would not represent a sustainable form of development. There are no material planning considerations which indicate that the development should be assessed other than in accordance with the Council's development plan, and therefore the principle is considered to be unacceptable. Furthermore, the NPPF defines the best and most versatile agricultural land as land within grades 1, 2 and 3 of the agricultural land classification. Consideration of the loss of agricultural land has therefore been given. Small areas of the site to the south and southwest are grade 2, which is considered as very good quality, and a larger band from the southwest to the northeast is grade 3A, considered to be good quality agricultural land, and the remaining site is grade 3B, which is considered as moderate quality. The application will therefore result in the loss of the best and most versatile agricultural land. The application proposes 25% of the new dwellings to be affordable, which is in accordance with policy H2 of the Borough Plan. As this is an outline application, new details on the housing mix have been submitted. However, any subsequent reserve matters application would need to align with the most recently published housing mix, as per the Housing and Economic Development Needs Assessment. Policy NE5 of the Borough Plan states that major development must demonstrate how it will conserve, enhance, restore, or create a sense of place and respond positively to landscape setting. The Landscape Character Assessment, dated February 2023, replaces the previous 2012 version and provides an up-to-date landscape character information for the borough. Outside of strategic sites and urban areas, developers must show that they have sequentially considered development opportunities in areas of least landscape value first. A landscape and visual impact assessment has been submitted alongside this application. The assessment shows that the hierarchy has not been followed and the areas of least landscape value have not been considered first. The development of 700 dwellings with associated facilities, albeit with some areas of open space and landscaping, would represent substantial adverse change for the site, which would fail to conserve or enhance landscape character. The proposal is therefore contrary to policies, including policy NE5 and the NPPF. A noise assessment has been submitted with this application, stating that the dominant noise sources affecting the development site are road traffic on Wellington Road and rail movements. Mitigation requirements will depend upon the detailed design of the proposed development, which will be addressed at reserve matters stage. However, the noise assessment fails to demonstrate the potential impact on future occupants from the employment allocation to the north-east of the site under the jurisdiction of North Warwickshire Council. The allocation is for B2 general industrial development. The report does not address the potential adverse impacts from HGV traffic, lighting, noise, air quality, or 24-hour working. North Warwickshire have objected on this basis. The NPPF states that existing businesses and facilities should not have any unreasonable restrictions placed on them as a result of development which was permitted after they were established. It has therefore not been demonstrated that this development could integrate effectively with existing businesses. Warwickshire County Council Highways have been consulted on this application and raise an objection in relation to the trip generation as set out within the submitted transport statement. The Highway Authority also object to the traffic surveys data, the traffic growth information and the modelling approach. National Highways have also been consulted and they state that there is insufficient modelling information on the A5 corridor to fully assess the impact of the development on the strategic road network, notably the A5 corridor. The NPPF outlines the need for planning to promote walking, cycling and public transport. Pedestrian and cycle access can be achieved from numerous points around the perimeter of the site. The site is also close to an existing bus network, with proposals to provide a new stop or stops on Weddington Road. Policy TC3 of the Borough Plan requires new development to be within 1,200 metres walking distance of a district or local centre. This site is not within this distance, and as such, a new local centre is proposed as part of this application. This would consist of a small retail store alongside up to 3 smaller units and parking spaces, electric vehicle charging, and a parcel drop-off point. This is considered acceptable by planning policy. In addition to the residential development for up to 700 dwellings, the following uses are also proposed on this site. Green infrastructure, including a community orchard, local equipment area for play, neighbourhood equipment area for play, a skate park or BMX track, and allotment provision. A local centre is also proposed to be in accordance with policy TC3. It is noted that the requirements for equipped play are below the required level of provision. However, such detail would form part of a future reserve matters application, and Section 106 agreements can be added to ensure that the provision meets the Council's requirements. The proposed surface water drainage strategy incorporates attenuation basins with flow control to limit discharge. Warwickshire County Council Flood Risk Management Team, as the LLFA, have no objections subject to conditions. Any detailed drainage strategy would need to accord with the accessible sustainable drainage systems. We have received an air quality assessment dated September 2022. It has been acknowledged by the applicant that at the time of submission, updated traffic data was unavailable, and therefore an updated air quality assessment could not be completed. As such, Environmental Health confirmed that they are unable to comment on the submitted air quality assessment. The submitted air quality assessment is considered to be incomplete for this reason. Therefore, whilst the application may be able to demonstrate that the air quality impacts of the scheme could be acceptable, the details submitted to support the proposal are insufficient to determine the air quality impacts in full, and that the air quality impacts of the proposal would be acceptable when having regard to the threats to human health. Therefore, this application fails to demonstrate that the proposal would be compliant with the requirements of Policy HS2 of the Borough Plan and guidance set out within the MPPF, the Air Quality SPD, and the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD. The submitted arboricultural impact assessment demonstrates that most hedgerows shall remain unaffected by the proposals retained and incorporated into the scheme. The majority of the existing tree cover is also unaffected. However, in order to facilitate the new access, the alterations to the current road layout, and in order to accommodate the required visibility displays, a number of trees are required to be removed. The submitted arboricultural impact assessment covers the mitigation strategy, which will deliver new tree planting close to the original position of the removed material along Weddington Road. Suitable mitigation can be secured by a condition requiring full details to be submitted alongside any reserve matters application seeking approval of layout and landscaping. It is on this basis that the loss of trees would not be a reason for refusal. A biodiversity offsetting report has been submitted, stating that the proposed scheme will lead to the delivery of a total net gain in biodiversity of 15.26 for habitats and 1.42 for linear features. However, the application is not supported by the submission of the full biodiversity metric spreadsheet, contrary to the open space SPD. It has therefore not been adequately demonstrated that the proposal would result in a biodiversity net gain. As per the addendum, it has been highlighted that the water vole surveys, which were undertaken in July and September of 2022, is contrary to the Water Vole Mitigation Handbook 2 and Water Vole Conservation Handbook 3, which states that two survey visits should be undertaken, one between mid-April to the end of June and the second between July and September. A rationale for not following this guidance has not been provided. Therefore, we do not have confidence in the likely absence of water voles in the watercourse within the site and the adjacent stretch of the River Anchor. Furthermore, it is stated in the ecological appraisal that skylarks were recorded within the site, and grasslands and arable fields could support these species. Skylarks are listed as a species of principal importance. Therefore, a breeding bird, a survey is required to provide an assessment of the impacts from the development on birds, and in particular skylark, to inform an appropriate compensation strategy for the loss of skylark habitat. The watercourse which runs through the site would be affected by the construction of 2 roads, additional paths and cycleways. The Open Space and Green Infrastructure SPD states that bridges must be used instead of culverts on all brooks, streams and rivers in order to maintain biodiversity connectivity across the site. This is especially important where roads cross these features. Therefore, confirmation needs to be provided that the watercourse will not be culverted in accordance with the SPD and should be provided prior to determination. It should be noted that the reason for refusal number 7 has been amended as per the above, with the reasoning set out in full within the addendum. The site does not contain any designated heritage assets. However, North Warwickshire have raised an objection as they intend to designate a conservation area near to the site. As a result, a heritage statement has been submitted. It is considered that whilst there could be some impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area, as it has not yet been designated, this only affords limited weight and would not be a reason for refusal. The Church of St James is a Grade 2 listed building and is located half a kilometre southeast of the site. However, there's no intervisibility from the site and the church, and as such it is considered that on balance the proposed development would not create harm to the setting of the church. The site has been used for agricultural purposes for a number of years, and there could be a potential for contamination issues. NBBC Environmental Health have been consulted, however no response has been received. It is prudent to include the standard contaminated land conditions. As per the addendum, we have received an updated contribution in relation to NBBC parks, the provision and maintenance of play and open space. Planning Committee is recommended to make a resolution to refuse planning permission and defend the appeal against non-determination on that basis for the reasons as printed within the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. I have 2 speakers on this item. I have first being Councillor Robert Tromans, who's speaking in objection. Councillor Tromans, you've got 3 minutes.
Excuse me, Chair, can I just say something? Following on from this, I'm an employee at Hariba Myra, which has been mentioned during this presentation, so I won't be voting at the end of the application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I should explain also for the record that I am the County Councillor for Weddington, the county division that this application is in. I am very concerned by this application. I am very concerned by the manner in which this has been brought forward. I only have to glance at the internet to see why the applicant has such a awkward reputation, a reputation that causes lots of people concerns, and I can well see why. We have to remember that an application not dissimilar to this was submitted by the applicant previously, and that was rejected. And it wasn't rejected on technicalities, on details, on layout of building or construction type or whatever. It was on the principle of development in that area, large-scale development. It's outside of what's in the terms of the borough plan that's in it, that we have currently, and it's outside of the development area of the new emerging borough plan. And the applicant's well aware of that. And it seems to me, and you know, I might be wrong, but it seems to me that there's been a cynical manipulation or attempt at that of the planning rules, that they wish to abuse the planning system. They appear to have submitted an application which is, you know, fundamentally the same, which they know is not going to be within the principles of development, or could reasonably conclude that. And what they've done is submitted barely enough to be considered an application. A lot of the detail, we've heard a catalogue of things that aren't in there, a lot of assessments that haven't been done, play and open space proposals that are well below they know are the requirements, and most importantly of all, the highways side of things. You know, there is a protocol and a requirement in place from the Highways Agency because of the nationally important route that is the A5. The applicant is well aware of that requirement to complete that process, for them and also Warwickshire Highways, and has not done that. It seems, from what I can see, and I can only comment as from what I have seen and heard, Chair, that the applicant has deliberately sought to run out the process by not providing all of the information, by knowing that there are these objections, saying that or indicating that they might overcome them, and then not agreeing for the extension of time for them to do that in the end. Automatically, therefore, triggering non-determination and hoping to get it through on a technicality. What an abuse of the planning system, and what utter disregard they seem to be showing for the planning inspector. I would point members to pages 38 and 39 with the extracts that are on there from the planning inspector's report, very clearly indicating why there should be no development on that site, no further development on that side of Nuneaton, outside of where is already prescribed in HSG1. Yet they have completely ignored that. In fact, they seem to show disdain for that, and it is unacceptable. I do hope that the council will seek to recover its costs for the appeal from the applicant, because they have acted in a wholly unreasonable way throughout. Thank you, Chair.
Has any member got any points of clarification? No. Move on to the second speaker, Councillor Keith Condicore, the Board Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's really nice to be in agreement with the planners for a change. The Wellington Trail, the old railway line, is a natural boundary from which we then look out to our last 2 fields of Wellington. We've lost everything apart from these couple fields, and they're really, really important for habitat. Skylarks and things were mentioned. Obviously a nice railway embankment, quite deep with all the trees on, full of wildlife, then needs the foraging area in front. And obviously in the winter floods, we have a massive flood that comes across the Wellington, down the anchor, but also a big flow of water across the site. And you see the site has got a ginormous area in the middle that's undevelopable because of how much that area floods and how much space the water needs. So logically, you'd not choose a site where you could only use 43% of the site. It's just so wasteful of land to ruin all this farmland, ruin all this habitat, and yet still only to be able to develop 43% because of all the impacts. And on highways, we've had so much development in Wellington now. In the morning, it is a stationary crawl into town, which means any extra traffic from this development, if it wants to go anywhere effectively, would end up going out to the A5, which is why the Highways Agency, or whatever they're called this week, are objecting as well. Not only that, Leicestershire Highways are objecting. I mean, this really is not the right place for development. It's far too far for anyone to walk to the railway station. It won't have a bus service on Sundays or in evenings. If it does get one, it'll be peak hours only. This is a very unsustainable place for development. And things like water voles. We know there were lots of water voles in Wellington about 4 or 5 years ago. Unfortunately, the ones by the rugby club and Cleaver Gardens have seemed to have been killed off by the sewage releases and sludge down the river. But it's almost certainly got wild water vole habitat along there. And you still see all the holes along the embankment by Wellington Church where the water voles have made their nest, and hopefully we'll get them back. Now, this is key environmental ecology. This is the bit of we want to save. And yeah, I do hope it gets rejected and the council will do an effective job at the appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Any member got any points of clarification? Councillor Hammersley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We on the committee, we rely heavily on the people that are experts at doing this and taking advice from them.
Councillor Hammersley, before you go on, is point of clarification.
Oh, sorry, no clarification. Sorry, I thought we'd moved on. Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. So, to allow debate to take place, I'm going to need a mover and a seconder. So, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Hartson. Thank you. So, any member. Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in at the right time now. So, carrying on, we take the advice from the planning department because they're experts at what they do, and we listen to all the reasons why things should be permissible or shouldn't. And there are so many objections and no's to this with the planning policy, etc., etc. So why this developer is pursuing with this, he knows all the reasons why, or they know all the reasons why. I can't understand the reasoning for the why, but so I won't be going for this application. There are just so many no's, and they're all explained in detail in here why it shouldn't happen. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hartle.
Thank you, Chair. This application hits a little bit close to home for me, having lived in Weddington and Caldicot for the vast majority of my life. As such, I've seen the new developments come along. I've seen the impact on the highways that they've already had. It has though the existing new developments in Weddington of Topiary Walk, Topiary Road, etc., have basically turned Weddington Road into a standstill at school times, work times, and this new development would massively inflame that problem, and it would also lead to even more issues with the A5, the Redgate Island. I just think that it is completely unsustainable where it is. With the points on the St James's Church impact, I don't think that should really be taken into consideration because of the existing new estates having already had an impact on the view of St James's Church. Yeah, I am fully with the officer's recommendation, and I cannot support that development at all.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to support the officer's recommendation on this. And I know it's a challenging time for that particular department because I think last count I was told you're in the process of having 3 appeal hearings that you're having to deal with. So this is a significant impact on the planning department that we're having to go through. But to read the list of reasons for refusal, this isn't just 1 or 2. This is quite a substantial list of reasons for refusal. And I think that gives us as members, and even more importantly, members of the public, an indication at how much this is a third-rate planning application that we are seeing before us, and the detriment it would cause to not only the local residents but the borough as a whole. And I think it's a double whammy for residents from the applicant actually, because they're showing a total disregard for the whole of the borough, knowing that this is going to cost us as a council significant sums of money to defend at appeal at a time when everyone's feeling the economic pinch. No, we aren't immune to that as a local council, and we are having to find the money to defend something which really they know that this is indefensible, and they are trying to get the local residents here to foot the bill. So really, from top to bottom, Chair, this is a third-rate plan from a third-rate neighbour, really. If they were hoping to get this through, you would hope they would like to try and be good neighbours with those who they are building near, and they are doing none of that, Chair. So that the sooner that we show this the exit and get to the inspector so that we can actually try and defend this and stand up for the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth, the better, as far as I'm concerned, Chair, because really, from what I can see, they've wasted almost entire woodland trying to get this through, and it's not really worth the paper it's been written on from the assessments that I've seen from officers tonight and in print, Chair.
Councillor Harbison.
Thank you, Chair. Very rarely on planning do I come across one that is quite so cynical, and quite frankly, if I didn't know better, I would say that it had been done deliberately in order to not succeed. I don't understand, not being an expert, I don't understand how a company that purports to want to make a profit could even operate in this way. I fully, completely, 100% agree with Councillor Tromans on this and everyone else who's spoken. I think it's a very cynical thing when a company exploits the planning process in this way. And if one of two things is occurring at this point, either they know full well the weight that this will put on the necks of Nuneaton and Bedworth residents and the already hard-working and overwhelmed staff at times, number one. Or number two, they have no idea of the impact that it will have, which means that it worries me they're actually building houses with 2 floors. Because if they're that bad that they're making mistakes like that, that worries me deeply. I just wanted to, as I say, reiterate my support for objection of this in the strongest possible terms. Those who know me well know that I generally don't deal in extremes. This is one that I have absolutely no question in my brain, not only that we should reject this, but that we should also look at how we deal with this company in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've had no other members indicate, so I'm going to move to the vote. And the recommendation that planning permission be refused and that the council defend the appeal against non-determination on that basis and for the reasons as printed in the agenda. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to item 3. Planning application 039687, 228 Heath End Road, Bedworth. I believe that's yourself, Philip.
This is item 3, which is for a certificate of lawfulness at 228 Heath Road. It's been brought in front of the committee because the applicant is a councillor. So here are the plans and a Google Maps screenshot showing the applicant address and site. Circled in red in the middle picture is the garage in question. This application is to determine the existing use of the garage and whether the evidence submitted is legal and so the certificate can be issued or not. Evidence has been submitted and it is outlined in the report to show the garage is used as storage for the shop and is deemed to be sufficient to meet the legal requirement. In conclusion, we are recommending that you note that the recommendation is for delegate authority to be given to the Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy to issue the certificate of lawfulness. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have no speakers on this item, so to allow the debate to take place, I'll need a mover and a seconder. And too many hands went up at once. So Councillor and the other person was Councillor Markham. Thank you. Any member? No? So to move the recommendation and that delegated authority be given to the Assistant Director, Governance and Democratic Services to issue the certificate of lawfulness. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. I'm not aware of any other items, so I'll close the meeting and have a safe journey home. Thank you.